So do you ever like wake up and dream that you're kind of like Willy Wonka?
No, I never dream I'm Willy Wonka.
Hello everyone, you are listening to The Art of It All, a collection of conversations with creatives, craftsmen, and athletes alike, dedicated to finding out what inspires them, drives them crazy. My name is Andrew Manzella, and today I'm in Winston-Salem's West End, talking with Ram Still, owner of Brasstown Chocolate. On this episode, we talk about walking away from a successful financial career, entrepreneurship, commuting the Amazon to harvest beans, polymorphic number 5 crystals, and how to build an award-winning business on fine crafted chocolate.
I started thinking about all the things we take for granted. And I thought, well, if I was stranded on a desert island, I would have no idea how to make glass. I wouldn't know how to make anything, really. So I thought, okay, how they make glass. So I did a little, exploring into that area with the silica sand and all that. And I started thinking about things that I ate. And I said, well, boy, I love chocolate, but I wonder how they make chocolate.
When I first told my friend Jonathan about this podcast and my obsession with finding local craftsmen and artisans with compelling stories to share, he immediately said I had to visit Brasstown Chocolate in Winston's West End. It's in an old metal building located at the back of Canal Street, and it's not someplace you get to by accident. The voice you just heard, that belongs to Ram Still, owner and operator of Brasstown Chocolate.
Brasstown Chocolate is a direct trade bean to bar chocolate manufacturer. And we get the beans in, we roast them, crack in a window, grind, temper, and mold. And that's what we are, bean to bar manufacturer. I started 7 years ago with about $500 and not knowing what I was doing. I just got interested in it. I started learning more about it. And I had in the kitchen table, I had a little tempering stone and scraper, so I would temper it by hand. I'd grind it without a proper grinder, so it was very coarse. It had a lot of graininess to it. And then I would temper it by hand and mold it up. And it wasn't very good, really, to be honest with you. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't very good.
So what did you do prior to this?
I've done a lot of things prior to this. I started out in the business world in finance and was controller of a corporation, and then I left that. I went into elementary education while I was doing songwriting for Nashville, and I had a lot of songs published. I had a couple of minor cuts, and so once I finished that, I went into making chocolate and working in elementary education, and then now 3 years ago, I've gone strictly into chocolate making.
What was that conversation like when you started making chocolate and you said, I kind of want to do this and this only?
Well, that kind of evolved. I mean, at first we never even intended to be a business. We just were going to make a few bars and sell them at the farmer's market. And we thought, well, okay, what if somebody gets sick when they eat our bar? So we better get some business insurance. So I looked into that and I got liability, $1 million policy, liability insurance. So from there we said, okay, well, it's a building, we're starting to win awards. Let's get into a few grocery stores and this and that. We got into a few here and a few there, and then it just kept growing into where it is now.
Has anyone ever gotten sick?
No, thankfully we have not had anybody get sick.
Is that scary to put everything into your passion project?
Yes, it can be because, as you know, being in education, they're not probably. Most educators aren't making a lot of money, so we didn't have a lot of money going into this. But we knew we had a good wholesale chain, a distribution chain, and that our product was really good, so we had faith in what we were doing.
Brasstown Chocolate is a purposefully small space and has an open door to the public if you want to come visit and buy a few bars. The majority of the chocolate bars they have crafted, though, are sold through wholesalers. The bars have made it across the nation, and now Brasstown Chocolate is making it across the globe.
I have a wholesaler in Salt Lake City, and he sends us out all over the United States. Through his distribution, we just got picked up by a distributor in Europe, in the Netherlands. So we're pretty excited about that. And we now have a Chinese importer that's going to be in the United States in November. They want to talk to us about trading our chocolate in Shanghai over into Asia.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's wild, isn't it, really?
I think your product is all the way across the world.
I know it. It doesn't make any sense, really. I mean, but there you have it.
If you stop and think about it, the fact that we have chocolate at all doesn't really make sense. The beans have to be grown, harvested, fermented, cleaned, roasted, and ground, brought to certain temperatures, reduced to a certain temperature, and if all that goes perfectly, you might have a good batch. If not, the process may have to be repeated, or that batch tossed out altogether. And while the process has changed over time, it doesn't really mean the process is any easier.
It's complex, it's heavy, and it's dusty work. I mean, the beans come in jute bags, and they usually are around 70 kilograms or 150 pounds. They have to be cleaned, and a lot of them, they come in, they have a lot of flats, broken sticks, leaves, whatever that they get at the farm level. But now I direct trade all my beans, and they're all clean for me before I get them, so that's eliminated that. But you get the beans in, then you have to weigh them out. You roast them, and we use convection oven for roasting. And once they're roasted, you have to crack them because you want what's inside. That's called the nib. So you have to winnow off the husk of the bean. So that leaves you with the nib, and each nib is approximately 45% cocoa butter. So when you put it in a grinder, which we have two, they have a granite wheel base and two granite wheel grinding stones that counter rotate, and they crush the nib, forcing out the butter, which makes it look liquid, and then you add your sugar and your cocoa butter. And then after about 3 to 4 days straight, 24-hour in the grinder, it's ready to come out.
3 to 4 days just to make a single batch of chocolate. And that doesn't even take into consideration the molding and the packaging time. Think about that the next time you're scarfing down a chocolate bar.
In all this process, each maker is trying to get a different tasting profile. And so I'm trying to hit certain temperature measurements when I'm grinding. So I take that with a gun. I've got one of these infrared guns. I shoot it and I see what temperature my chocolate is. And I can slow down the grinder, I can speed it up, I can put a cooling source on it, I can put a heating source on it to get the temperature that I'm trying to achieve.
So that temperature affects what the taste?
Oh, absolutely. It's the same with roasting. I mean, you can do it a million different ways. It's very temperamental to get it's polymorphic. The cocoa butter crystals are polymorphic in that they will form in several different patterns as they cool, when they're heated and cooled. And only one's good for chocolate, and that's what they call type 5 crystals. So you have to lower the temperature, raise the temperature, have the humidity right in the room, the temperature right in the room to get those crystals to form properly. And if they don't, then you get what's known as a bloom, and that's where you get the dusty swirls on the back where the cocoa butter migrates and comes to the surface. And it is so frustrating. When I first started, sometimes I have to temper a batch 3 or 4 times before I can get it right. Because when you're doing it by hand, you start at 115 degrees, then you have to take it down to 82. You have to leave it there until you get enough type 4 and 5 crystals, then you bring it up to about 88 degrees and try to melt out the type 4, leave enough type 5, and then you're ready to mold. But if you don't get it right, if your humidity is high in the room or if your temperature is above 68, and 68 is kind of that cutoff point. If you keep it there or lower, you're going to be fine. But I've melted down I don't know how many bars and had to redo them.
What is the origin of chocolate? Who first made it? Do you know?
The Aztecs, Montezuma.
How would they figure out that process?
Well, they didn't put sugar in any of it. They would just get the cacao beans and grind them like mortar and pestle, just grind that thing in there. And then they would add chili powder usually and whip it into a frothy drink.
Honestly, I have never wanted to make chocolate any less than I do right now. And that's just the manufacturing. Where do the beans come from in the first place?
We direct trade all our beans, and that's very important because we'll pay, I'll say on average I'm paying $4 a pound delivered, and Hershey's probably paying 75 cents to $1. And I tell people, if you go in a grocery store and you pay $2.50 for a candy bar, can you only imagine what the poor farmer's getting paid when it finally gets back to him? And it's little to nothing. I mean, these people are living in poverty. A lot of them don't have power in their houses, can't educate their children. So it was very important to me to find direct trade relationships and to pay them, 300-400% over spot so that they can start educating their family and give them a good livelihood. So, I mean, Hershey's and those guys, got nothing against them, but their bars are primarily sugar. Sugar is obviously the cheapest ingredient. So we do something completely different from what the grocery stores are doing.
Right, it's not really even a comparison.
No, you can't compare them. It's a different thing. Our bars don't taste as chocolatey as what you're used to. People sometimes say, "Oh, I taste, fruit in this bar." Well, there's none in there. That's just the nature of the bean.
So the bean actually, you said, is a fruit. So
Correct.
the bean is a seed.
Yes,
essentially?
it's a seed.
So what does the fruit actually look like? Is it like
It looks like a football, sort of, and they grow right off the sides of the trees and off the limbs and off the trunk. They're about 12 inches in length for the most part, and they change colors. They get beautiful colors like the leaves here in the fall. And so when they're ready to harvest, they'll take a machete and they'll try to whack it right at the limb, right at the tree level, so they don't harm the tree. And then they break them open and pull out the seeds and the pulp, and then they put them through a post-harvesting process, which is fermenting and drying. And that's so crucial. Whatever they do at the farm level affects flavor tremendously, and it can't be undone here. So if they've done something wrong, there's nothing as a maker that I can do to make it right.
How big are the farms? How many people?
Most of them, they measure them in hectares, which is a metric of acres, and most of them our farmers are small, very small. They'll have maybe 4 or 5 hectares, and then they have like a central processing unit, and they call that buying it at the gate. It's the gate price, so you buy the wet cacao. So a big cooperative might come in and be made up of 500 farms, and they'll bring it all to a central fermentation facility.
So the smaller farmers work as a co-op, and then you
Most
work
of them.
with the co-op.
Yeah, we work with the co-op, except our Ecuador is a single estate, which is just one farm. But most of them are several farmers, and they don't have the means to produce enough cacao to do their own fermentation. So what they do is they'll pull from maybe 100 farms, and they'll blend the beans as best they can, and then ferment them and dry them so they get a consistent flavor. But there can be differences when you're pulling from that many farms.
Sure.
Yeah, when I first started, there was no one wanted to give you any information, and it took a long time for me to finally make the right connections, to find out how to get everything, procure all my raw materials. It took a lot of digging and a lot of work and inside information. And now we use Latin American beans, the fine flavor beans.
What's the difference in them, in the different beans?
Flavor, the Trinitario and Criollo beans from Latin America are what they call fine cacao beans or flavor beans. West Africa produces most of the cacao, and it's what's known as bulk cacao or forastero beans. And they're bred to be very chocolatey tasting and very hardy trees, so they get a good yield. And that's why a lot of people don't want to grow the Latin American style bean, because they don't get as much of a yield. They're a little bit harder to manage.
But that's where you get the different...
That's where you get your flavor notes, and that's what we're trying to do. Cacao is technically a fruit, and so we try to bring out the fruit notes of each origin. So every one of our bars will taste different.
So how long does it take to get the shipment?
Well, that can be interesting, especially with Venezuela. Sometimes it's hard to get beans out of there, and a couple of times a year they shut it down just to keep the beans in their country. And right now you can't get much of anything out of Venezuela. We're doing 9 bars plus a small bar, which is I call the Millworks bar, which gives us 10.
So what's the best one?
My biggest seller, my favorite of all, is the Bolivian Wild, and we get that from Volker Lehmann. The indigenous peoples will go up the Amazon in canoes and harvest this off of the islands and the peninsulas and so on. It's truly wild grown. There are no insecticides, there's no fertilizers. So the seeds, what most people call cacao beans, are about half the size of normal. But it's got a beautiful, wonderful flavor with honey notes and some floral notes as well. And that's actually outselling my sea salt bar, which used to account for 25% of all sales.
Yeah, I was going to say, I looked at the options online. I figured the sea salt would be pretty popular.
Sea salt was the most popular, but Bolivian Wild's outselling it now.
So what's the greatest joy that you've gotten out of this whole adventure?
That we have been a blessing to some other people. I have people write me, that's somebody called me from Idaho the other day, so she just loved my 85% bar. And to know that we're helping the farmers, we just won a bronze award with our Peruvian Ucayali, and that cooperative wrote to me and was very thankful. They said that we're really helping them in their community by supporting what they're doing. And that's what gives me the most joy of all, is knowing that we're helping some other people, and that what we're doing can be a blessing to other people, that they enjoy our chocolate and that we're helping farmers.
Do you have any plans to expand, grow? Do you want to become
No,
a franchise?
I've never, money is low on my list of motivation, and I've never wanted to be large. We didn't start this to be large, and I'm going to cap it when I get to a certain level of bars production per month, and that's going to be the end of it right there. I'm not going to go anymore. I love seeing what I can do with the beans, what kind of flavor notes I can bring out on them. And I love entering them in the contest and see if I can win awards. And that's kind of what drives me, to see what can we do with these beans.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to The Art of It All and Ron Still's story of Brasstown Chocolate. If you would like to stop in or just learn more about Brasstown Chocolate, visit their website at brasstownchocolate.com. Come back next week as we talk about boxing coach Cliff Hardy. Hardy was an Olympic hopeful with a promising career as a pro boxer until a hand injury threatened it all. Listen to the journey of one of boxing's greats, and Winston native, and his eventual and unlikely return to the ring. Thank you for listening. This is The Art of It All.